Give me the next 30 minutes and I'll help you make the most of your 20s and your 30s. So I made my first million when I was 26. A decade later, my portfolio company has generated last year over $250 million in aggregate revenue. And I'm 36 now. And so in this video, I'm gonna give you the real world advice that I wish someone had told me much earlier. So number one is you wanna take asymmetric bets. If you're under 30, you have no reason not to go 100% all in on your goals. The downside is nothing and the upside is everything. If you think about life as giving you kind of lottery tickets, right? You can scratch off a ticket, and if you don't win, then what did you lose? The scratch off ticket. But the thing is that when you have nothing to lose, you have nothing to lose and you only have things to gain. And so the objective when you have as little as you can is to take as many shots as possible because your downside is zero. Right? And so it's the only time in your career where you can take more shots than anyone else. And so the reason or the fact that people don't take shots, and myself included when I was younger, I was so afraid to take a shot. But the only reason that was holding me back was the belief that other people who I don't even talk to anymore would somehow judge me as a quote failure. You never actually start from scratch ever again. Because every time after the first time you start from scratch, you start with an experience. So you still always net a positive. And so that's the beautiful thing about taking shots is that you either get the big win or more likely you learn something and then that learning compounds. And so the thing is that I had a misunderstanding of how success worked, which is that it's far more stacking many things on top of each other than it is nothing, 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 and then something works, right? And so if you imagine success like a bridge, right? So you're over here and you've got this chasm that you have to get across, right? This is, let's say there's alligators here and lava and all sorts of stuff, right? And then there's you over here who's got, your big smiley face and you're happy and you're doing all the stuff you want. The thing is that I thought that I just kept wanting to jump over this gap over and over again and think like, if I just jumped hard enough, or if I had the right opportunity, that's what would do it. But more likely than not, it's really like you install these bricks on the path and you keep walking and it's like, okay, well I fall here. Okay, well I'll fix this one later. And then you take and then you start again and then you fall here and then you fix this and you keep going and then you fall here and then you fix this and then all of a sudden you make it all the way across. And that's what it looks like or what the experience of kind of becoming the overnight success is. And that's why so many people talk about it, where it doesn't happen at all and then it happens all at once. It's not that it happens all at once. The actual outcome of getting a system to work all the way through, that is binary. But the process of building the system is actually very linear. I'm also not saying this from a position of even though I saw some success early in my career, I also started pretty early. And so I had 9 failed businesses, 9, before I had one that really worked. And so I bring this up to say that I don't know what failure you're on right now. Maybe you're on 0 failures, you're on 1 failure or 2 failures, but you have way more failures in you. At the end of the day, one of the big realizations I had is that since life is an infinite game, and what that means is that there are games where you have a defined time period and at the end you count the score, right? And then there's infinite games where the only point of the game is to keep playing the game. And so the point of marriage is not to get married, it's to stay married. The point of health is not to get healthy, it's to stay healthy. And the point of business is not to get into business, but to stay in business. And so basically the only thing that you have to do to stay in business is to choose to continue to fight. And so once you realize that, then you realize that you become a success the moment you decide you are, because being successful is far more about being in the game, about being in the arena. And so when you're in your 20s, what you lack in experience, you have to make up for in effort and hours. And believing otherwise leads to a life of honestly well-deserved mediocrity. So if you're hearing this, you're like, okay, I got it. I need to take more bets and I need to take maybe riskier bets because my downside is nothing. All right, well, which bets do I take? So number 2, don't follow your passion. So passion is vague. And so it's very difficult to say, I like this thing more than this thing. But what you can say is I'm better at this than that. And so passion usually then comes from competence, not creates competence. And so we usually like things that we get good at rather than getting good at things that we like. Right? And so this is the thing that I think confuses a lot of people. And so the other flip side of this is that enjoying something doesn't even guarantee that you're good at it or that you're gonna be able to make money from it. And I remember my dad used to tell me when I was much younger, he said, listen, if I were following my passion, I'd be a bartender at a ski slope, right? He said, if you can just make money, he said, the rest of your life, you can do whatever you want. And I actually think it was very practical advice for me. And I'm very grateful that I got that. But the thing is that getting good at anything, you have to slog through this period where you're probably not going to be passionate about it because it's very boring, it's very monotonous, it's very repetitive, right? It's one thing to say, oh, I like ping pong. It's another thing to say, like, I hit 500 forehands and 500 backhands every morning and every night, right? It's a different level of dedication that you have to it, and that isn't going to be something you're passionate about. You might like playing the game, but getting good at the game are two very different things, right? And so it sets this false expectation that I think ultimately harms more people. And I think one of the biggest reasons of not following your passion is that your passions will change as you age. I promise you, the things that I was passionate about when I was 20 is not things I'm passionate about now, and I'm sure the things I'm passionate about when I'm in my mid and late 40s are gonna be different than things I am now. Same as 50s and 60s. And so this idea that like I have to find this one thing, it puts a ton of pressure on that thing that it has to be perfect forever. And if it's not gonna be perfect forever, then why don't we be practical now so that we can give ourselves options later? So fundamentally, all we're gonna look for are things that you're good at that people already spend money on, because that creates a very high likelihood outcome of you creating something that you can exchange in the marketplace.